Hi, welcome to Family Law Friday presented by Florida Women's Law Group. My name is Betsy Corbett and I'm in the marketing department. Family Law Friday is designed to be a resource for all women with a family law issue. Today, we will be discussing substance abuse in your marriage and how it might affect your divorce. Before we get started, I wanted to give you some information about our host, Heather Quick. Heather is the founder and owner of Florida Women's Law Group that advocates for women in North Florida. The firm educates and empowers women on the law so that they can find the strength to endure the process and end up better both financially and emotionally. She's been a licensed Florida attorney for the last 20 years, with the majority of her practice being in family law. Please join me in welcoming Heather Quick to Family Law Friday.
Thank you so much, Betsy, and thank you all for joining us. And this topic we are discussing today is really relevant to so many people, and really, I have definitely seen an increase in substance abuse as an issue during the divorce in the past 5 or 6 years. There's definitely an increase, and on both sides. Let's be clear, it's not whether it's affecting yourself as the wife or it was affecting your husband and the issues in the marriage. So what I wanted to talk about today is just some things, how it affects a marriage and then the divorce, and things to understand about it. Again, these videos are here to give you some good information so that you can maybe have some clarity on what's going on in your situation, and then an idea of some direction or things to be thinking about. When we talk about substance abuse during a marriage, it is one we all know, anyone who's been married, that there are peaks and valleys. It's difficult. It is something that really does require your attention and work, and of both folks. And even if we look at the past year, because there certainly, with the isolation and change in everyone's circumstances, there certainly has been an increase of substance abuse issues. And when that exists, it does change the dynamic, but then the other spouse, that puts a lot of pressure on them to really do the heavy lifting, and the kids, or maybe the finances, or things that the your spouse being incapacitated can't do. And there's so many levels of it. And when we talk about substance abuse, I would say really abuse of alcohol, prescription drugs. People are like, well, they're prescribed, but if they're combined with alcohol, or not taken as directed, or just completely not prescribed for you, those are all significant issues. And further, there are of course illegal drugs and substances that can of course have an effect on the marriage. So I am lumping that all in together, although there are many variations and obviously many options on what those substances can be. But it often can lead to then emotional and physical abuse. Not always, but it certainly can. And in the reverse, 75% of domestic violence abuse is related to use of drugs and or alcohol. So I think that it can be either way. Sometimes there's domestic violence, and hey, in order to cope with it, you drink too much. I find that to be a very more of a cause and effect issue. And I do, if somebody's violent, they're violent, and it just is exacerbated potentially when there are substances involved. I'm very, if you've been listening to our videos for a while, or have, know me personally, I'm very straightforward, and I believe in the truth. Sometimes it's hard, painful, and things very harsh. But it's important because, first thing we're talking about is the broken trust. And an addict is an addict. They're extremely manipulative. They're liars. and they are going to do whatever they need to do to continue with that behavior and the substances. And that's just really what it is. And too many people I have counseled, and it is counseling because they're coming to me talking about divorce, but they don't want it. And I do have to deliver that hard truth. They're an addict and you can't fix it. Only they can. And that's the hardest part, which we'll get into a little bit more. And of course, you know, that tension, the dishonesty can of course lead to more arguing, more disputes. And often, very often, there just becomes a disconnect and you just are like, I'm not even going to deal with this person. And so that separation doesn't help much either. There certainly can be financial problems. Now, some folks can totally function in the workplace, which is shocking to most of us because we're thinking, well, they must be like falling down drunk. No, they figured it out, but it may still impact the finances. And certainly if they've had any, you know, resulting legal trouble or criminal issues, that can affect their job and certainly the finances. So those are all things that really, you know, weave into it. And then of course, if there are children involved, you know, there are extremes, but there can be areas, and in the past, you know, I had experience with an issue where there was DCF got involved, and it was in fact the mother had some serious substance abuse issues, and the children, you know, had to have a plan, and so DCF helped them with a plan, like who they're going to call, what are they going to do. Now, the husband involved didn't have a substance abuse problem, but then he left the children with the mother knowing this was going on. She passed out. So then DCF initiated the action and said he failed to protect the children because he left them with somebody. And so that's where sometimes you got to understand potentially the ramifications of that. Very traumatic and difficult and expensive proceeding for that family to go through, and that happens often. And I just believe very strongly that when this is such an issue and you know it is, but you don't want to leave, you really have to honestly look at the situation as well as yourself and why you're staying and who that's hurting. I know that if your spouse has a problem, has a substance abuse, your role in what you're thinking is, because you know who they are, who they used to be, or what they're capable of. And that's where you're holding out hope, but it's false hope, and really it's denial. Because if they're not doing the work and they're not willing, you can't do it for them. And that's just one of the hardest things to do, because I think we all think, well, if I get in there and I can really help them, I can control the situation and I can fix it because I'm a fixer. I love this person so much. And then another problem, because you do love them, usually you just can't live with them anymore. And you know, all these conflicting emotions. And I've seen it many times, and it's real. But what I want you to know is you can't fix them. You can't help them anymore. And then, you know, there are a lot of things you can tell yourself that will keep you in this situation. Like, well, if I leave, then they'll really go down the tubes. If they're going to go down, they're going to go down. I hate to break it to you. It's and that's again, some of that harsh reality out of a true concern for you and just to help maybe you see it. Because we don't have control over anyone over ourselves and our own, you know, behavior and actions. And those are the things that I know keep people there and this one, I understand, and it makes sense to me. Well, I know what they do every night, drink themselves, you know, to where they're incoherent. And then if we divorce by leave, the children will be alone with that person. Well, and that makes sense to me. It's a definitely real fear, but understand that if you're honest with your attorney and you gotta let us know, tell us everything, then we will work through with the courts and we'll guide you what's the best way to protect your children. Maybe it'll help your spouse maybe your spouse will get help. Again, we can't control that, you can't force it. The court can impose some things on them, to, create some barriers or some things that he will have to do in order to be with the children. But there are things we can do. Nothing's 100% or the ideal, but it's truly better than you and your spouse living that situation, your children seeing how you're compensating and seeing that as their role model for how they're gonna move forward. And these are they're difficult issues, and they affect so many people. And I get it, I do. And you so want them to get better, and you so want them to be the parent to your children that your children need. And sometimes they can do it. Sometimes they can really go through therapy. Sometimes the inpatient therapy, the rehab, it takes a long time to click. Sometimes it doesn't. I don't know. Sometimes it takes jail. But at the end of the day, it takes that person to be very strong. They have to be very strong, and they have to be willing to do it and do it every day. So when we talk now about divorce, so you take that step and you're ready, nervous, of course, scared, just don't know even how this is going to play out. You got to address it. And I will tell you, if there is a true issue of drugs or alcohol with your husband, we have to address it, because you can't just pick and choose and say, well, then we'll bring it up later. No, because then that seems to be using that as a way to manipulate. And maybe you've been in this manipulative relationship, and so that would seem normal to you, but not in the legal arena. If it's there, let's address it and put all the cards on the table and offer solutions, not just wait and we'll keep it in our back pocket. Because then do we really want help, or are we using this as a way to get an advantage? And so that's one of the big things that I would say in the divorce that has to be addressed. Now, if there are no minor children, it really may or may not be an issue, only to the effect maybe if they have really spent so much money that we could prove in recent times. Can't tell me about 5-10 years ago. It's got to be rather recent, and then that may certainly help us out, and that may be relevant. Florida's a no-fault state, and if you've watched these videos, you know that. So how it comes into the divorce and how it's relevant, again, that just depends. And it does if say their actions, their abuse maybe keep them from working, and then they're wanting alimony, but they're certainly capable, they're just not willing, or you're wanting alimony, but they're very unpredictable. A lot of issues. So it does come into play, and that's where I encourage you, and absolutely, you've got to talk to your attorney. You've got to tell them what's going on, because then we can tell you if and how we see that playing out in the divorce. What will the courts consider? How will that, really manifest itself? What results will we get on that? We don't always know. But based on your facts and circumstances, and when you meet with your attorney, that's the time to discuss it and look at what the options are. Because it's a problem it's an issue that most attorneys and all the judges really deal with frequently. So there are resources, there are things that we can do to, help them and or help you. If you've been struggling, our job is to help you with that. And if you're struggling and you're wanting help, meaning I don't want to live like this, I don't know what to do, we can help you with that. We can direct you in the right way, because that's really, the courts are there for that. It doesn't mean you're the bad player who's not going to get your kids, but it means you have to come forward and be honest and, recognize what maybe the issues are, and, who do I go for help? And are you willing to have help, and really willing to be in therapy? And, there's so many things, but no one's perfect. We all struggle with different things. And it's hard if you're going through a divorce and you're in court, your life's under a microscope, for heaven's sakes. The rest of us, that isn't as big of a deal, but this is where you are now, not forever. So there are ways we can help you. We want to help. We want you to be the best version of yourself. And that's why I started this firm for women just like you. Whether you're struggling with a husband who's got substance abuse issues, or you yourself are struggling and you have got to get out of this marriage. You don't know how. We will tell you how. We will help you through once you make that decision, and just give us a call. That's the hardest decision, is to reach out for our help. So Betsy will tell you how to get in touch with us. And thank you so much for listening. And we are definitely here to help you through this time.
Thank you so much, Heather. And thank you to everyone that was able to join us today. If you have a family law issue that you need some help with, please give us a call at 904-241-0012. Thanks.